G'day everyone, this is Rangadad. Not financial advice, just the way I'm looking at the market. Back at the desktop today, so a little bit nicer environment. Bitcoin's had a little bit of a pullback, which is kind of to be expected after such a decent candle to the upside. A little bit concerned about the volume that we're getting in this area at the moment, but generally it's looking okay. So there is another slight concern here around this value area high. If we close back below that, it may lead to a little bit more downside, I think. So that's something to really keep an eye out for. And obviously there's some underlying issues going on at the moment as well, which could lead to further downside. But in general, momentum's ticked to the upside if we close somewhere around here. And BBWP's just started to tick back above the signal line. The advanced decline line is still going down on the S&P 500. So that is obviously still a concern. Still think it's probably going to look something like this, which could pull us back a little bit further. But it's been very stubborn. It's more like a pullback in time rather than an actual pullback in price at the moment. We'll have a look at some other stuff soon, but the issue is momentum is still to the downside, hasn't crossed back over. I think we've actually got divergence on, no, probably not on the daily, but yeah, it's looking like more downsides likely. So potentially a pullback into next week into the FOMC meeting, and then hopefully a bounce, but sort of stuck in this channel at the moment. Equal weight is pulling back though. So again, I am expecting this to kind of bounce here. So potentially just another downside on Friday, and then next week's moves to the upside. It would kind of make sense. But if we do see a turnaround on the equal weight, then the rest should follow. Same with the NASDAQ. It's kind of, NASDAQ looks like it's pulling back, or it's at the start of the pullback for the NASDAQ, which is odd. Normally NASDAQ will sort of move first in either direction compared to the S&P 500. The non-equal weight, the normal NASDAQ, is just still kind of sitting in that bullish control zone. So again, probably a bit more pullback expected on the NASDAQ. It's probably going to be at the 515 level on the Qs. We'll probably pull it, find some support, unless we just get a big flush day. This vector candle here is definitely a target, and a bit of a gap close as well. So 21,200 is probably somewhere around there. Would be a decent level for a bounce next week. If we get a bounce, if we don't get a bigger pullback. XLI is still pulling back. So industrials, certain sectors of the market are suggesting that the market's not great at the moment. But still not really seeing signs that there's going to be like a massive dump, at least not until potentially start of next year. This is interesting. So equal weight consumer staples looks like it will probably pull back a little bit more. Consumer discretionary is the same. It looks like it's going to pull back reasonably hard. So that would suggest that there's a little bit more downside to come. So it might be a little bit nastier than what I'm thinking at the moment. Russell probably needs to find some support reasonably soon. Looks like there's potentially a vector candle forming here. It's going to be really interesting next week to see what happens if we start just dumping off and coming back into like this vector candle here. I'd probably be more convinced that we're getting close to end of cycle and we may have actually found the top. Like if we pull back that hard and we don't make a new all-time high on the next run up, then that would suggest that we are topping. But yeah, still XLY, XLP is still pushing up. I do expect this to start coming down pretty soon. Even the equal weight is still heading up. That's the only real indication that we're not going to go into a bigger pullback at this stage. KRE looks like it could find a bottom there pretty easily too. Don't really want it to close a daily below the 64 level. If it does that, then probably more downside back into this trend line. ITB, yeah, okay. So here's another indication that the economy's not looking great. So home construction looks like it has closed a daily below this week here and below the close of this vector candle. So I'd expect it to at least come down to the 200 EMA, but this is looking pretty nasty. And when these things sort of roll over in a big way towards the end of a cycle, then yeah, you're probably getting pretty close to the top. Semiconductors still not looking super healthy either. Probably a bit more pullback on that to come. DJR gold has bounced a little bit, but not looking great either. So the fact that we closed below this level here, I would expect this to keep pulling back a little bit, which would suggest the market's going to pull back. US stock market's probably going to pull back a little bit more. VIX looks set for a run up as well. The fact that we've had some pullbacks and we haven't had much of a spike in the VIX suggests there's a little bit more to come as well. Skew, has that closed today? Thursday, so that's today's close. So that's pulling back a little bit as well. Sorry about the background noise. I'll just drop the gain a little bit. Might cut him out. So yeah, this pullback here, I would expect this to keep going on skew. DAX still doesn't look like it wants to break through that level. That looks like another rejection off it. So yeah, that's probably all you're going to see on the DAX for a little while. Chinese market is kind of interesting, kind of weird. Didn't mind it down in here at that rejection off this level in here is pretty nasty. It's not exactly a great, not a great level. What do we got here? China, yeah. Sorry. UK, Japanese yen. Japanese yen, the Japanese market looks like it's going to pull back from here. UK 100 didn't break to any new highs or anything. Looks like it'll pull back a little bit more as well. I'd probably expect the UK market to come into this vector candle here around 8100. Japanese market could be getting ready for further upside. There is some vector candles up here. Next week, you've got the Bank of Japan decision on their interest rates. Last time they raised their interest rates, that's when the US market shit itself, and the Japanese market got a decent pump. TLT is pulling back pretty hard because yields are going up. And yeah, I kind of expect this to keep going, to be honest. This bond indicator's finally done a bit of a drop. Haven't made new all-time highs either, so yeah, that's probably some more downside on that. Bonds are finally showing a little bit of weakness here, so that's a an interesting close on high yield. Yeah, it looks like the market's not super happy with things. The fact we didn't make a new all-time high in this run up with a high on the market, I'm actually starting to think that the market has peaked. And we may get an early sort of move to the downside before inauguration. Typically, it happens around inauguration and can last for a month or two. But at the moment, it looks like it's kind of wants to go a little bit earlier than that at the moment. Yeah, TLT's dropping pretty hard. Could even come back down into this vector candle here at 88. I think TLT at 88 is probably going to be a pretty good buy, because if the market's going to start dropping and pulling back hard, then I would expect interest rates to start dropping as well, which will push treasuries to the upside. Yeah, 2 years. Finding a bid. So copper's not looking healthy. Copper has been a bit of a bellwether here. It's pulling back. BBWP's starting to increase, kind of. It just dropped a little bit, but that looks like copper wants to pull back a bit more. Gold is probably going to do the same. This could just be a bit of a retest here, but this doesn't look great. The rejection off this little peak here, we could see a gold price back down into this green box here. That's going to be a pretty big resistance level, I would say. All right, silver. So the gold-silver ratio is down as well. I did hear someone quite smart the other day talking about gold and silver, and they're probably going to pull back with the market. So we may have actually seen the highs on these things for the time being as well. Probably going to close out my positions in them and just sit and wait for a little bit. US oil. US oil needs to stay above this trend line to confirm this breakout. If US oil pushes higher, which it looks like it should from here, then that's potentially going to put pressure on inflation and probably not going to be great for the economy. It's going to put the Fed in an interesting position, because if inflation does pick up, they don't want to be cutting rates, and that could lead to a pretty nasty situation for the economy, which it kind of looks like that's what's happening at the moment. Dixie will probably go on another run from here. You guys realize your chats are showing up on my video. So yeah, hitting this peak here is going to be interesting on Dixie. Dixie closes above 1077, then it's probably going to go on a bit of a run, and it's not going to be great for things like gold and yields and stuff, I don't think. As I said yesterday, this is still looking pretty nasty, global liquidity. I think while ever that's still dropping and the market hasn't bounced yet, it's probably going to be a pretty decent correction, because we are just got a fair bit of divergence there between the two. That typically doesn't lead to great things. Percentage of stocks above 50-day moving average is coming back. Look for a bounce in the next few days, like next week sometime. So that's kind of, again, suggesting a little bit more of a pullback and then a bounce sometime next week, probably around FOMC. Yeah, Mag 7 looks pretty overheated at the moment. It's probably going to pull back as well. Tesla's already started to. This could just be a confirmation of the breakout, though. Tesla's looking pretty interesting. Yeah, Nvidia's not looking great still. Nvidia really needs to find some support here and break back up, at least trend along this trend line here, but doesn't really look like it wants to at the moment. I think there is another trend line somewhere through here, roughly. Like that was probably not a bad level for the breakdown and retest, move to the downside. So yeah, this is kind of the level down here for Nvidia, around 116. Could find some support here, but that's the last level, I would say, before nothing. Needs to find support there. Google's pulling back after a pretty massive run after their quantum chip announcement. Kind of expect them to struggle. I mean, that's a massive push. In the way the market's looking overall, I'd expect that to be top there. ARK's hit the top of our range and pulling back. There's some pretty good short levels amongst all this. The only one is Apple. Apple seems to have actually said, fuck your resistance level, and I'm going to break through that. Apple may buck the trend, but momentum is starting to tick to the downside, but we're still well and truly in the bullish control zone. So that's probably the only interesting one. Amazon too kind of looks like it wants to go on more of a run, so kind of interesting. Meta might be doing the same thing. It's kind of hard to tell whether this is a breakout or not. Kind of need confirmation. Another day to the upside, break above those wicks would be handy on Meta. AMD's struggling, needs to find some support pretty soon, I'd say. Yeah, this is a pretty key level for AMD. There's a chance it will do it. Momentum looks like it's shifting to the upside. BBWP's on the way up. Needs to do it soon. But again, with the overall economy looking like it wants to pull back a little bit more, it may break down a bit further. SMCI looks like it wants to come back as well. Same with ASML. So semis are getting pounded at the moment. Let's have a look at the ETF. Yeah, semis ETF looks like it wants to come back a bit more. I think it's just people taking profits into the end of the year and people seeing what the economy's looking like, getting a bit concerned. Still think there's more upside to come relatively soon, but fairly interesting. So we haven't really got a break of the stablecoins versus Bitcoin either. So we're just in this range here. Need really some confirmation as to which way it wants to go, and I think this should actually drop, but hard to say that at the moment because Bitcoin could follow the rest of the market to the downside. ETH longs have started to close down a little. So Bitcoin longs, look at it on this chart, still dropping. So there's still people sort of taking profit, not huge profits, but still people taking profits at these levels. So that's kind of a little bit concerning. Go back to this one. ETH BTC's jumping a little bit. That's not a bad sign. Not super convincing though. Total crypto market cap. Yeah, it actually looks like it wants to pull back too. Just gonna have a look at that on the weekly. Pretty nasty looking weekly candle. Momentum's pretty high. Yeah. We could be getting pretty close to a decent pullback here, which still kind of expecting Bitcoin to make another push to the upside first. It's just looking it's hard to it's hard to make that call where it's at the moment. We do have bearish divergence on stochastic momentum. It is still above that trend line and it is above the signal line on the daily, but it's not looking great. If we do have a run up, I think the targets are probably going to be, let's go back a month. Yeah, don't think it'll be huge, to be honest. Like potentially your 110 to 115 might pull it up. If we do drop and drop hard, then it's probably going to be into the 85 level even. But at this stage here, target to the upside of 104 is still in play. It's not a very convincing pullback at the moment. Super chart on this. So CVD, just do it on the 1 hour. Cumulative volume delta did finally get a little bit of an uptick on futures, but spot CVD is still to the downside, so that's not great. Open interest dropping a little bit here, but there is actually people buying this dip as well. So that actually is probably the most bullish sign you'll get in the short term. So it looks like we'll go for that liquidity to the upside at this stage. I was looking at some other stuff this morning. Yeah, like liquidations to the upside kind of look like reasonable targets at the moment. There's still so many buyers in here though. Way more buyers to the downside than there are sellers to the upside at the moment. So like that level there, 110, we've sort of mentioned that for a while. It's had a lot of sell orders in there. 105 is probably going to find a little bit of resistance, but it should push through, I think, up into the 110. You'll get a lot of shorters coming in. People are pretty keen to short this at the moment by the look of it. Some big short liquidations coming into the charts. Don't think they're going to make a lot of money unless they close out pretty soon. This is another concerning point. So we've had these two big orders on the BlackRock Bitcoin Trust. Look like they've been sell orders at the high. We pulled back a little bit since then. We haven't really had any bids come in. But the opposite to that, Coinbase has actually had some bids at the lows here and hasn't really had any sells or any more big orders come through from that. Even the 2x long, they've had another one in there yesterday. Pointed that out yesterday, but they're typically going to be a buy. So that's suggesting some bullishness. So metals and mining looks like it might be basing a little bit. Interesting big order coming through after that dip. I think that's suggesting that mining might actually go on a bit of a run. It's been pulling back pretty hard lately, while the rest of the market's been going up. So same with energy sector. And this is probably an indication that oil's going to go up. So typically, there's some pretty chunky buys in there right at the lows, just as oil's breaking that downward trend line. So energy sector's probably not a bad buy at the moment. Whereas consumer discretionary actually looks like it's going to potentially come down. So it looks like it could be a rotation week on the market. So expect S&P 500 and NASDAQ probably to pull back a little bit. Energy and metals probably going to go up a bit, which probably will send gold up a little bit as well. They typically would go together, but we've been a bit disconnected lately. So yeah, consumer discretionary probably coming down. Technologies, it's interesting. It might get a bit of a bid. Semis have been hammered pretty hard lately, so they may actually push up. Maybe more towards the end of the week, but there's certainly some rotation going on by the look of this. So yeah, hard to set a target down here, but somewhere around 96 is probably, if it is going to pull back harder, but it looks like it has kind of recovered the 20 EMA, sorry, 200 EMA on the hourly, 50 EMA on the the fact that we did break down from that trend line, haven't managed to reclaim it yet either. That's probably a fairly bearish sign too. So there's a lot of mixed signals here. There is some bullish divergence though. There was some bullish divergence at this point on RSI. This actually had bearish divergence there. So RSI is not a bad thing to be looking at the moment, particularly a cyclic RSI, because the divergences on this have been pretty good signals. Yeah, we need to stay above that 200, I think. The fact that it didn't follow through after that vector candle through the 50 EMA suggests there could have just been a bit of a pullback, maybe pull back into this level to pick up this vector candle here and pick up the 200 EMA just to really reconfirm that and bounce off it. That's kind of what you're looking for. If we have a decent closure below the 200 EMA on the 1 hour, then it's probably going to go a fair bit deeper, but we haven't got a lot of vector candles until we get down into this one here, the wick. So that wick is still a bit dangerous. Just depends if Bitcoin's going to buck the trend of the market or if it's going to go with the market. I think if it comes back with the market, then it's probably going to come back into this pivot level of 92, which is around last week's low as well. So somewhere around this 91, 92 would be a target, and that would be a pretty good reset level on the longer time frame RSIs and stuff. So that will, I think, bring a pretty big pullback on most of the alts as well. There's going to be some good buying opportunities there, I think. And then, yeah, potentially a push into the end of the year, then a bigger pullback after inauguration. It's tricky. It's getting murky. There's lots of money flying around different areas that, like, the big guys are just moving shit around at the moment. So be careful. Probably lower leverage at the moment is the way to go. Probably longer time frames as well. So this here doesn't look like a buy right now. Down at 98.8 would be a good nibble. And then honestly, I'd probably be, if it breaks below that, I'd be waiting for it to come down around that 92, 91, 92 level. All right, that'll do for today.